There is no greater insult to the dignity of a man than to be disrespected. It is not merely a personal offense. It is a challenge to one's standing, authority, and control in the complex web of power that defines human interaction. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Renaissance philosopher and political strategist, understood that power and perception are intimately intertwined. To Machiavelli, respect was not granted. It was cultivated, enforced, and, when necessary, seized through fear and dominance. The man who tolerates disrespect invites erosion of his influence. Disrespect is not a solitary event. It is a crack in the foundation of your authority. Left unchecked, it festers, multiplies, and metastasizes into contempt. Therefore, when someone disrespects you, Machiavelli would urge immediate, calculated, and absolute action, not out of emotional impulse, but out of strategic necessity. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. Why? Because fear commands respect. Love is voluntary and unstable. Fear, properly applied, is a tool. When disrespected, a Machiavellian response is not to lash out irrationally, but to assert dominance in a way that reestablishes hierarchy and reminds the world of your consequence. The first step in confronting disrespect is emotional neutrality. Machiavelli teaches us that passion is a liability in the theater of power. Emotions betray your position. Anger exposes vulnerability. Hurt reveals weakness. Instead, adopt the calculated coldness of a lion sizing up its prey. You do not react, you respond. Every insult is information. Who delivered it? Why now? Was it spontaneous or strategic? Is it a test of your boundaries or a declaration of rebellion? Machiavelli would advise the ruler, or the modern man who lives by the rules of power, to read between the lines. Disrespect is rarely accidental. It is a probe, a reconnaissance mission to assess the limits of your tolerance. Your response must make those limits clear and unbreakable. To respond effectively, you must understand the stakes. Public disrespect is far more damaging than private disrespect. Public humiliation undermines your image in the eyes of others. The court, the workplace, the community. These are theaters where perception becomes reality. If you let a slight pass publicly, you do not merely lose face. You risk losing your seat at the table. Therefore, public disrespect requires public consequence. Consider Cesare Borgia, one of Machiavelli's ideal rulers. He understood that appearances matter more than reality. When one of his lieutenants abused power and threatened Cesare's reputation, Borgia had him executed in a public square, not because of personal hatred, but because it sent a message: betray me, and you will die. The lesson is not to become a tyrant, but to enforce consequences with the precision and visibility necessary to preserve your power. In your life, you may not wield a sword, but you possess tools: social influence, reputation, access, and strategic exclusion. When someone disrespects you, you respond not only to the individual, but to the audience watching. You craft your response to show others what happens when your dignity is violated. This is not to say that every offense must be met with scorched earth. Discretion is also Machiavellian. Sometimes the most potent weapon is subtle sabotage. Machiavelli knew the art of delay, misdirection, and indirect punishment. The person who disrespects you might never see the bullet, but they will feel it. Their reputation erodes, their access disappears, their plans unravel. You become the architect of their quiet fall, and you do it with a smile. Never argue with a fool in public, for even the wise cannot tell the difference. If someone disrespects you in front of others, never dignify them with rage. Instead, Machiavelli would urge a poised and dismissive posture, an icy calm that unsettles. You do not defend your honor. You act in a way that makes it clear that your honor is beyond their grasp. Disrespect from inferiors must be crushed. Disrespect from equals must be countered. Disrespect from superiors must be remembered and repaid when the time is right. Every insult carries within it the seed of opportunity. You decide whether to let that seed grow into a thorn or transform it into a weapon. Machiavelli believed in the manipulation of reality. The prince does not merely react. He shapes the world to suit his vision. When disrespected, your job is not to restore the old balance. It is to create a new one where you are stronger than before. This may involve breaking alliances, forming new ones, or changing your approach entirely. It is a game of chess, not checkers. One of the gravest errors a man can make is to seek validation from those who have disrespected him. That is weakness disguised as diplomacy. Machiavelli would scoff at the idea of reconciliation without power. Apologies, when forced, are empty. Forgiveness, when granted from a place of inferiority, is mockery. True power is when they apologize, not because they mean it, but because they fear what happens if they don't. When someone disrespects you, do not internalize it. That is what they want. They want you to question your value, your place, your confidence. But Machiavellian philosophy teaches that your power does not come from others. It comes from your control of perception and consequence. If they strike your image, strike their foundation. And do not forget, the world is always watching. Even when no one is around, your response to disrespect builds a habit of power. Those who let it slide become men who always let it slide. Those who address it firmly and strategically become legends. There are moments when forgiveness is strength, but only when forgiveness comes from a position of indifference and control. If your enemy is already defeated, you may grant them pardon, but never mistake tolerance for virtue when your reputation is on the line. The Machiavellian path is not about morality. It is about stability and influence. You act to preserve your power, not to protect feelings. Machiavelli said, "A prince who is not himself wise cannot be wisely counseled." So you must become your own counselor. When disrespected, retreat to silence, gather information, weigh your options, then strike, not for vengeance, but for control. Let them learn that to disrespect you is to play with fire. Let your retaliation be so complete that others think twice before stepping out of line. Let your absence hurt more than your presence ever could. Withdraw your approval, your energy, your alliance. Let them feel the vacuum left behind. The Machiavellian man knows that respect is not requested. It is enforced, and once lost, it must be regained not through words, but through deeds that redefine the relationship. So if someone disrespects you, remember this: do not react. Respond. Do not explain. Demonstrate. Do not forgive. Reposition. And above all, never let them forget who they tried to insult. Power is the ultimate reply. When dealing with sustained disrespect, whether subtle sabotage, passive-aggressive behavior, or open defiance, understand that repeated offenses signal a systemic flaw. Either you have allowed this disrespect to become normalized, or your current power posture invites challenge. A Machiavellian must constantly assess his aura. Is it one of dominance or tolerance? If disrespect lingers, the answer is clear. A man who is respected does not need to raise his voice. He commands space with his silence, his decisions, and his unpredictability. Machiavelli noted that men will always conspire against those they do not fear. Make yourself a figure not of cruelty, but of consequences. Your reputation must whisper warnings before you speak. Let history remind you, leaders who allowed insult to go unpunished lost their thrones. Julius Caesar, too forgiving of those who questioned his rising power, met the knives of men he once trusted. Louis XVI hesitated when firm action was required, and the guillotine answered for his passivity. Mercy without strength becomes suicide. The Machiavellian mind does not merely desire to win arguments. It aims to render opposition obsolete. Your success, your discipline, your ability to rise above the small while crushing the strategic. This is your answer to insult. While others rant, you build. While others gossip, you maneuver. Your legacy is not crafted through defense, but through dominance.